Hi, I'm meteorologist Tom Wright, and this is a short presentation from theweatherguru.com. Talk about the weather forecast over the next couple of weeks. I've started here with a water vapor satellite image, not only because I think it's pretty, but because you can see a lot of interesting features on it. First feature to take notice of is a storm down over the southwestern United States, and that was a system that moved through Oregon and Northern California yesterday. That'll be spinning off into the plains, as we'll see here. And there's another weak system off the Pacific Northwest coast right now. Yet another storm, a little bit bigger storm, is in the Gulf of Alaska at this point. And if we look even further west, we can see out by the Aleutians there's another storm, and even another storm beyond that. So we'll zoom in a little bit closer to home and look at a visible satellite image this time. And just to pick out a couple more features here, you can see a little bit better view of the storm over the southwest U.S. The front off the Pacific Northwest coast right now, and notice behind it there's some cold air cumulus indicating some cold air that's moving down from the northwest behind that storm. And then here's the next front. They'll be moving into the Pacific Northwest here over the next couple of days. So I'll take a look at some model data now, and this is the forecast from the American GFS model. It shows 500 millibar heights, which are the black lines. You can also see the blue wind barbs, which indicate the wind at 500 millibars, and the colors represent vorticity or spin in the atmosphere. And meteorologists look at the 500 millibar pattern to get a basic idea of what's going on. Wherever you have these troughs, we tend to have stormy weather, and where you have ridges, we tend to have fair weather. So in this panel, this is the initialization from this morning, and we see the big trough in the southwest U.S. and the weak storm off the Pacific Northwest coast that I had talked about. I've skipped ahead in the model data now to Thursday morning, tomorrow morning, because nothing particularly interesting has happened between this morning and tomorrow morning. And you can see that the storm that I talked about over the southwest U.S. has indeed kicked out into the plains, or is forecast to anyway. And this is going to produce a pretty good snowstorm over the central plains tomorrow. Nothing particularly exciting going on in our area. The weak front offshore is going to be moving onshore, produce some rain, of course, over the Pacific Northwest, but nothing particularly interesting. And another weak little system has shifted south into California. Here we are by Friday evening. Storm out in the center of the country has opened up into a big trough, certainly producing some snow and stormy weather up in the northern plains and Great Lakes area. But now we have this next system coming into the Pacific Northwest, which is a stronger and colder and wetter system. So this should be producing some pretty good snows in the mountains. Snows down into the lower elevations will be possible over Oregon, maybe even Northern California. Probably won't see any snow down at the coast in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Northwest Oregon. But it is going to be a cold system, so it should pile up snow in the mountains. And we notice a weak ridge building behind this system, and then potentially another system coming next. Now here's the forecast for Monday evening. And the storm that went through the Pacific Northwest Friday into Saturday is now kicked out into the plains, and will be producing another big snowstorm in the plains, probably over the Dakotas, Iowa, and Minnesota, probably even up into the Great Lakes. I imagine there's potential for some severe weather with this one down into the southeast U.S. And the next system that we talked about is now moving onshore Monday evening in the Pacific Northwest. And it's another little chilly system. Doesn't look particularly strong, but should produce another round of snow in the mountains, so good for skiers. Now I've skipped all the way ahead until next Thursday, February 28th, a week from tomorrow. And just wanted to show that there's a tendency for the models to develop a ridge over the western U.S., which would be dry for the vast majority of us. Still have southwest flow into the far Pacific Northwest, northwest Oregon, Washington, and BC. We'll probably continue to see their usual February rains. But in general, the forecast shows ridging toward the extended period. So once we get through these storms here in the short term, probably the last one being Monday, then we should see a trend toward drier weather. And finally, I wanted to show what's called an ensemble forecast. And in ensemble forecasting, the modelers tweak the model and rerun it multiple times with different configurations to see how the model changes depending on those configuration changes. And what we see here is basically the average of all of those. So these black lines represent the mean or average of all those forecasts. And the colors represent the amount of spread in the models, or the amount of difference in those different runs. So the brighter the colors, you see the color scale over here, the higher those colors or the brighter those colors, the more spread there is, and so the less confidence there is in that. But the basic point here is that we even out as far as March 3rd show a tendency for ridging over the western U.S. with relatively low spreads. So I think this is a pretty likely thing to occur here in the extended, once we get through this set of storms, go into a more of a ridging pattern in the west. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and thanks for listening.